I am the Yocto build and release engineer. I also have authored some of the license compliance classes within Yocto and Open Embedded Core. I'm an employee of Intel Open Source Technology Center, and what I'm going to be talking to you about today is license compliance anti-patterns and some of the things that Yocto is trying to do to help people who use Yocto to comply better with GPL and various other open source licenses. So the first thing I want to say, I have two disclaimers first. First, I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on television. I don't pretend to be one. I don't have a law degree. I know enough about open source licensing to be dangerous. Nothing I am about to say should be any way constitute legal advice. They apparently have these newfangled things out there. They have law degrees. They're called lawyers. People make jokes about them a lot. So if you really want legal advice, go seek one. I also have a personal disclaimer. Nothing I'm about to say here should be considered representative of either my employer or any of the projects that I work on. It is my personal opinion only, except for my cats. My cats tend to agree with me. This is For You, the server cat. And yes, her name is For You. She is exactly 4 you tall. So my job and my goal in life is to do this. I want to put compliance enforcement organizations out of business. I want to make it so that Bradley in the back, and I think he's probably in the back, oh no, he's right on the front, can retire and become a software developer again. How do we do this? It's actually fairly simple. Comply with GPL, comply with LGPL, comply with all the other open source licenses out there. And this really needs to be an industry-wide effort. We need to start creating a culture of license compliance. Because in the end, we benefit from, depending on whose numbers you want to read, 1.4 billion, I've heard 9 billion, I've heard 10 billion. We benefit from all this open source software. So from a product standpoint, it's a whole lot easier and cheaper to comply than it is to reinvent this wheel. So I want to talk about how people screw this up, how people really make a mess of things. And if you talk to the compliance organizations and the compliance enforcement folks, almost all enforcement actions start off with something very simple. No sources offered, no sources included. In a lot of ways, you can't even tell which version of the source they used. And part of this is because when people are producing things, they're just hacking this all together. Some OEMs don't even know that they're distributing GPL. They may have gotten firmware from someone upstream and they have no idea. So the vast majority of the failures, if you talk to compliance orgs, really begin kind of here. And then they just escalate. You get a no source offers as required by GPL. Or even better, and I've heard this, there's a source offer included, they fill it out, send it off, and it gets sent back, returned to sender. This makes them happy. And yes, I'm being sarcastic. It makes them miserable. And my pet peeve, being a build engineer, is that there's no build scripts. That's one of those things that just every time I see that, oh yeah, they included source but no build scripts, my teeth start itching. And then you see just general hostility towards source offer requests, or just, hey, I see that you're releasing these images, I don't see any source. And I'll talk about this in a little bit. This is an actual, I'll talk about a personal story that I'm involved with right now. So, when I was starting to look at this, I want to ask myself a question: where do violations start? And what I kind of discovered is that violations kind of start in 4 places. Either with software developers or build engineers, or it comes down to suppliers or organizational. And you can kind of group these up into two categories. Places where there's just technical fail and places where there's organizational fail. With technical fail, it starts with technical staff. And one of the first place is, oh, your technical staff needs to know absolutely nothing about licensing. One of the nice things that, and I'll talk about my employer for 1 second, one of the beautiful things about when I started at Intel is that if you dealt with GPL, you had to take a class. You had to learn about this. So then you have technical staff knowing absolutely nothing about GPL, absolutely nothing about any of the open source licensing out there. So then they can do fun and crazy things like, you know, statically linking to LGPL and not including any source or object files. Or you don't have a build engineer. And yes, I am a big proponent of having build engineers because it keeps me employed. But you have no process monkey going and sitting there saying, okay, we built this with this and with this and with this and with this, and we have an entire process around this. Because in the end, process is boring, and it's just better that we don't have one. And that way, when the compliance organizations come and knock on our door, we can scramble around and try to supply them with what they want. And, you know, sometimes this may take a week, sometimes this may take a month, sometimes we may never be able to actually supply them with this if we don't have good process. They may start at the technical failure level, but they just get exacerbated by organizational failures. In that organizations, if they're getting chips or getting firmware from their suppliers, say, hey, you know, this is Linux on it, where's your GPL compliance? Because, you know, your corporation should always assume the risk of your upstream, because that just makes really good business sense. It doesn't. And in fairness, sometimes, you know, you don't know. But in that case, you know, this is something that you have to work with suppliers with. Or they do something, and this is another one of those things that just makes my teeth itch. They never, ever respond to an initial compliance query. It's like it went into dev null. Just disappeared off the face of the earth. And that is just something that just exacerbates the situation. It makes compliance organizations just angry. And in the end, this is how you end up in court. So this is a personal story, and I'm not going to name who this is because I'm still kind of trying to work with them. Someone was producing something with OE. And I go, oh, that's interesting. Are they doing OE Classic, OE Core? What are they using? So I go to their website and I start poking around, and I download this big file and I start poking through the software, and hey, there's some sources here, and I know there's some GPL stuff, but they don't actually list it as being on the image, but it's there. And there looked like there was some static linked LGPL stuff and LGPL to closed source code, no object files, no source. So I sent them a very nice email. It kind of went something like this. Hi, my name's Beth. I work with Open Embedded and on the Octo project. I actually wrote some of the license compliance stuff, and you know, it looks like something is going on here, and I wanted to see, like, from an end user perspective, what's going on, so maybe I can help you. That was 2 months ago. I got 0 response, and I know I hit a human. This is just a really bad way of doing this. So what this all ends up is, while compliance anti-patterns begin at an engineering level, organizations just tend to make them so much worse. And since I've been in this industry now for 20 years, I feel like I deserve my own law. So I'm calling this Pidge's Law. There's no technical solution so bad that it cannot be made worse by the involvement of lots of lawyers. As you can tell, I love lawyers. And the thing that drives me nuts is this is not hard. It isn't hard. Yocto and OE Core are starting to solve some of this. Some of the just low-level things like, you know, Yocto and layers. Hey, guess what? There's your control scripts. You need a license manifest because you need to audit stuff. There you go, it's there. You need the source. We have the ability to generate that. Licenses on the actual images, we have the ability to do that as well. And there's more in the works. But in the end, non-compliance can be hard. Because what it does, and you know, I know out in the muggle world, they may not do this, but I know that when I go to a Fry's or something and, oh, there's Linux on this, I look for an offer. If I don't see it, I don't buy it. It damages your company brand, damages Linux's market penetration into embedded space especially. And in the end, everyone's miserable because everyone's arguing about this. I mean, what it boils down to is it's easier to comply right up front than getting involved with lawyers. So I want to talk about some of the things that we're doing with Yocto to solve some of this. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the basic license field within our recipes. So it has to be Python parsable. So GPL v3 space ampersand space LGPL v3 whatever. And the license wrangling functionality looks up into what we call the common license directory. These are licenses that we grab from the nice folks at SPDX. There's a few that are missing, we grab them from OSI. And if there's anything else missing, we tend to generate them on our own. And those tend to be non-OSI compliant licenses. And one of the abilities that we have is that if I'm developing an application layer using Yocto or Open Embedded, I can actually append to that license directory. So if I have my be a really, really nice person license, or whatever my license is, instead of sitting there and dumping my license into that common license directory, I can just start appending it within my layer. One of the other things that we have the ability to, and there's some functionality on this waiting for me back at home that needs to actually have a pull request for, is package level licensing. So if you're familiar with Yocto, we have recipes, and sometimes one recipe may have multiple packages. And sometimes those packages may actually have different licenses to them. So sometimes recipe licensing is not granular enough. So if you use license underscore package name, you can actually assign the license to the package. One of the good practices is that license should contain the aggregate of all those package licenses. So the overall recipe license should contain that. The problem I find with licensing, especially the license field, is that collecting all these license it's time consuming and it's error prone. One of the errors that the nice folks at Debian found was CMake libarchive. Is anyone familiar with this? Someone had checked in some closed source, I believe they were build scripts for Windows, and it was missed for 2 years. No one saw this. We didn't see it. No one saw it. Apple didn't see it. No one saw it. So my wish list, and if I could have like 3 wishes in the world, one of them would be is a common way for licensing to be referenced, and that the upstreams would adopt this, and then everyone would be happy, especially me. That way, you know, when I start doing license wrangling, for doing a Yocto build, I can say, does this have, like, say, an SPDX file? Because SPDX would be a very nice thing if all the upstreams adopted. If it has an SPDX file, then great, I'll use that. I'll ignore my license stuff. Maybe throw a warning saying we should audit this recipe to sit because the license information has an SPDX file and we should actually verify that they are both similar. In the end, the upstreams know their licenses better than I'm going to. Copylab Compliance, and Chris Larson back there, hi Chris, actually wrote this, and with a lot of licenses, you need to provide the source as well as the patches. And there's kind of ugly ways of doing it, which is the Yocto downloader. You can just package that all up and ship it out. But that also contains, you know, the entire Git repository. It's just, it's fairly large. And this is a nice small way of generating this. In your local conf, you put in inherit Copylab Compliance, that bake your image name, and it generates an entire directory with symlinks that you'd have to tar up. I believe it's, what is it, tar -h, to dereference those symlinks and create a tar file. And I saw this at, it was like a few days ago, Mentor released their Panda Board BSP, and if I had functional tear ducts, I would have cried. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. It made me so happy. There was source download, which was using Copylab Compliance. There was the scripts to control the build because they built it with Yocto. License information was there. It was so full of compliance win, it made me very, very happy. One of the other things that Yocto is providing is the image manifest. And we generate the image manifest by default, but you can also put the manifest on the image, as well as all the licensing information on the image. One of the problems, and I realize this is a problem, is that I copy both the generic license as well as the actual license, if it's a copying file or whatever, over to that image. And there's some optimizations that can happen because it ends up spiking core image minimal up by about 15 meg. So there's some things that we can do to make that a little better. But manifests are important because when you get a knock on your door saying, hey, we're going to audit you, you better know what's on that image. And if you don't have a decent manifest, you know, how can you audit? One of the other things that has been introduced, I believe this was in 1.0, was incompatible license. Some people don't want recipes that contain GPL3. So setting incompatible license equals GPL v3 will go, and this does GPL v3 plus GPL v3.0. If you look at throughout our recipes, there's some variations with licensing names. There's an effort to try to standardize that. It's still under discussion. But we tend to handle that fairly easy using the SPDX license mapping, the functionality within license BB class. The problem with incompatible license, if you do something silly like incompatible license equals GPL v2, you're going to get something that doesn't boot. Yeah, the kernel might not be there. Maybe. We also have license flags. One of the things that we do by default is we keep out commercial software from our base builds. But sometimes we need commercially licensed software. Sometimes, like for example, as my duties for the Intel, as an Intel release engineer, when I release Meta Intel DSPs, sometimes I need to generate images with Intel's EMGD driver. Well, that's commercial software. So we needed a way to whitelist certain commercial software. Another example is Fluendo. So we can set within local conf license flags whitelist equals commercial underscore package name, and it'll actually say, okay, normally we're just going to avoid all the commercial stuff except for you, and actually throw that on the image. So this is kind of my wish list rant section here on some of the future of license collection and where I want to see this start going. And some of this is actually under development right now. I would love to see the upstreams adopt SPDX manifests because it's kind of a nightmare for me when I sit there and I'm trying to figure out what the license of this is, and I see the copying file says one thing, but there's this header file that says another thing, and what's the license? I'm not a lawyer, like I said. So I would love that if the upstream started adopting that, I'll start looking for it. and use that instead. One of the things that we're also starting to work on, and there's been discussion on the mailing list this past week and a half, 2 weeks, is a source archiver class, which is basically Copylab Compliance on steroids, where we can take parts of the build like the source plus patches, tar it up, and end up generating source RPMs. I opened 2 bugs within the past 2 or 3 weeks. One's bug 1953 and the other's 1952. I opened them up right after each other. And I call 53, hey you, this is what you need to do bug, which is the walk the horse to water, hold its head down and say drink. This is, we go through the entire manifest of what's on the image and do, in very simple English, you need to provide source for these packages. You need to provide license information for these packages. You need to provide source plus package or patches for these packages. The other one, and this was suggested by Bradley over there, was the offer generation. Have a field within local conf that has your name and address and where they can go and have it spit out at the end of the build. Here's the offer generation. Print this out, stick it in the box, and everyone will be happy. What we're trying to do, and it's one of the things that I challenge everyone here to do, is start helping build a culture of compliance. Like I said, we can lead a horse to water, but we can help with tools, but we can't make people do things. We can't make people do the right thing. None of this replaces good process. None of this replaces good training, and we really need to make, as an industry, a commitment to compliance, to where we're thinking about this as the first thing we do before we write that first line of code. So because I've used some images in here, and it would be really ironic if I kind of stole them off the internet and didn't actually follow my own advice. So the first image was Quentin Messe Portrait de Notaires, and this is public domain, although it also, the compilation copyright is licensed under FDL. For you, the server cat is courtesy of me, and it's also public domain. The horse image is courtesy Tracy Irway. She's in the Octa project as well, and she's also licensed as public domain. And FDL3, and this is one of my part of my ranting part. Trying to put the license on the slide, I tried and it ended up unreadable. So if you want to go see the license, go there. So questions. Or does someone want to see it? Maybe I should do a demo real quick of Copylab Compliance, because how much time do I have? Oh, I have lots of time. I'm going to do a demo real quick of this. There we go. Okay, so I already have this built out, so you're just going to have to trust me that it's there. Or actually, I'll just show you. LS temp. Boy. So I've been building some core image minimal images, and if I was to release these in this state, I'd be in violation of like a number of licenses, because I have no copyleft compliance. There's no sources, there's no patch sets. So one of the things that we do here is local.conf, and go down here. And open that up. And this will take a minute to go as long as wireless network stays up. Yeah. The Internet of Things, and we can't have decent wireless. So right now it's doing the rootfs generation. And hopefully it'll do the Copylab Compliance work, and I can show you this. It doesn't, boy, will my face be red.
They said it's Chris Larson's code.
Yeah, it is Chris Larson. If you want to blame someone for this not working, blame Chris. Okay, so let's take a look here. ls temp deploy. Yeah, all right. Look at that. Maybe. I did this earlier. Huh. Okay, give me a second.
Wrong director.
Oh.
Don't do a bit right there.
No, that one worked.
The search is up the tree if I'm convinced. You can run it from now on, just for future reference.
Okay. Minus C. These monitors. This may fail. We'll see. Yeah, all right. You'll just have to trust me that this actually did this. What?
There's a typo.
Oh, is there? Oh, hey, yeah. Let's see here. This is what happens when I don't expect to do a demo.
Complaints.
Oh, yeah.
I make that typo a lot because I type that word a lot. Especially when I have complaints about compliance.
Oh.
Do you have it inherited?
Yes.
It should.
Did you type
Yeah.
Did you
Did you
know
say-
what to complain about the type of inheritance?
Oh, if I did that. No. Okay, you're just going to have to trust me that this actually did work in the hotel room, and then it came down here. And, hey, I have another bug that I need to open. It's one of the things that, and like I said, we've really started doing and focusing on ways of doing license compliance within the past year. So, again, everything that we're doing, this is, a work in progress. But if you look at what we're doing with maintaining source, maintaining build scripts, trying to create manifests, trying to actually create this culture of compliance, we're moving in the right direction. And I don't want us to be the only ones doing it, and I ask for help. It really needs to come from the community in this. So, any questions other than